Hello, I'm Karen Beale, Mandayo Growing Faith Programme Manager, and with me today is Joe Haslam, who's the Early Years Advisor in Manchester Diocese. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Lovely to see you today. Now, Joe previously worked within the Children Changing Places project in Bolton and is an ALM, as you can see from the hoodie, and is a member of St Maxentius Church, where Joe's been instrumental in establishing a midweek worshipping community for families. So I wonder, Joe, if you might briefly give us a little bit of background of how this service came about.
Okay, so this service came about in the autumn of 2020. As we were allowed to open our churches again for worship, we began to realise very quickly that we needed to think about providing something for the children and our families which was more accessible than our traditional Sunday worship. So in conversation with fellow ALM, Jan Bennett, and the incumbent at the time, Jan Ainsworth, we decided that we would trial a midweek worship for our families to come along and attend on a Wednesday evening.
Great, Joe. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the form the service takes.
Generally taken by myself and Jan. We do have clergy support through Reverend Hannah Lane, and initially was from Reverend Jan Ainsworth. But we do generally lead it as ALMs. So it's based on a service of the word. So our service structure follows that. It's a welcome and a gathering. We follow with a praise song, which is generally a more modern praise worship song, with actions and a lot of movement. And then once we've done that, we have our preparation prayer, which is interactive with actions, so that we're all participating actively in it, and followed by a confession, which is our sorry prayers. And then when we've done our sorry prayers, we all know that when we are truly sorry from our heart, that God forgives us. So we have to have the bubbles, which is, I have to mention, because it's a huge part of the service. The children absolutely adore it, and the parents get even now. If I send some over here, Joe, I need a few. So they know that the bubbles are part of God forgiving us, sort of thing, for when we are truly sorry in our heart. After we've done that, we follow with a gospel reading, which sometimes it's interactive. We might add actions in to animate it for them to join, for the children to join with. And then we follow it with a talk. And again, we try and make it as interactive as possible, children taking part, demonstrating things. When we've completed our talk, and our teaching points for our service that day, we follow with a creative prayer. And the creative prayer is something that we introduced because at the time when we first started the service, we weren't allowed to do crafts activities, we weren't allowed to come together. So we had to provide each child with something that they could just do in their pew, and be part of that prayer process. So and that's something that, even though we can move around now and do lots of things, we've actually stuck with, because the children actually really like that part of the service. And again, it's something for them to take away with them. And then we set our Family Faith Challenge, do our Anglican notices like all good churches do, and then we finish with our blessing and our dismissal. So yeah, it lasts between 30 and 40 minutes. It's normally on the 30 minutes, which is a good timing, a good amount of time for just keeping the children focused and engaged.
You mentioned something about a family challenge, and in terms of thinking about more than Sunday, or perhaps we should say more than Wednesday in this case, or more than Thursday, I know there's service on a Thursday as well. How does the worship prepare people to live out their faith every day?
So in our Family Faith Challenge, it's something that we set each week with our families to then take away with them and do as a family. For example, when we looked at Psalm 23, we set the family a challenge to go for a walk and find those elements that were named in Psalm 23. photograph it, and we encourage them to talk about it and reflect on God's creation, and reflect on what that means to them. We've given the children the challenge of, and the adults the challenge of doing most recently a discipleship diary for the week. When have I acted out being a disciple, being a follower of Jesus? And the children came back and shared with us the following week what they had done in that week, that made them just focus a little bit more on actually what does it mean to follow in Jesus, and where can I recognize in my life that I am doing that. It just gives the opportunities to families to engage beyond our service and think a little bit more about what we may have talked about as part of our talk. And then from that, they're thinking about it at home. But the key point to that is that they then come back and they share that with us the following week. And we make sure as part of our service before we start that we share what we've all done that week. And, it really does encourage families to engage and continue that on.
So it's encouraging conversation, not just with the children, but with the adults too. And as a church community, bearing in mind this is one of the services that happens, but it's very much a church community in your church team, what fruit have you seen from this?
We've definitely seen engagement from the younger congregation, the younger members of the congregation wanting to commit to their faith journey more, and taking up the offer of admission to communion. We've had significant number of children go through admission to communion, and then further on from that, we've also had, that also includes adults for admission to communion. We've also had children that have continued their faith journey on their pathway and made the commitment to confirmation and followed the confirmation. We've had adults as well that have come through that process as part of the Wednesday service. We've also had that crossover from our Sunday worshippers with the leadership of our church through the PCC. This time round, we opened it up to say we needed some new people to come and join us in thinking about the running of our church. And we had some parents from the Wednesday night congregation say yes, they would be interested, and yes, they wanted to be part of it. We do have crossover from our Wednesday night to our Sunday. On occasions, we have families that come and join us for special services in particular as well. This is our church. Yeah, this is our church and this is our service.
Yes. But it's great that the church, the team ministry is recognising that, as I said before, as one of the many services that happens across the team and people are involved in the leadership. So thank you for that, Jo. And I wonder if very briefly, with your work hat on, with your ministry, your employed ministry hat on, you might tell us something about your role as early years advisor in the diocese in helping others to facilitate and develop worship for early years children and their families, and how that enables through the week discipleship.
So as an early years advisor, I go in and support churches in developing early years worship through Tots Praise, through toddler groups, through looking at what we can offer on a Sunday morning worship as part for specifically that's engaging and intentional for young children.
Is there a link with those things you're saying about with church toddler groups? Is there a link with schools and our church schools and early years too?
There's opportunities within our churches, but also linking those opportunities in our schools, looking at our early years units and classes within schools, and continuing that faith journey on. The partnership that we can develop between developing early years worship in our churches through Tots Praise and toddler groups can generate a pathway that supports transition into our early years, where children can continue to engage in purposeful, engaging worship that's meaningful to them and accessible for them to understand.
That's great. Thanks, Jo. I know one of the things that has been done in other places, I'm just using Wiggle Worship as an example. We know that's not for everyone, but Wiggle, who's a friendly worm, am I right? Is he a worm or just a creature? Do we refer to him?
He is a worm. He's a Bible
Wiggle worm,
worm.
but he might be seen in school, and then he might be seen in toddler group, and he might be seen in church on a Sunday as well. So just making that link
So
through worship.
for example, in St. Maxentius, we do wiggle worship on a Sunday morning with our toddler group, with our tots families, and then wiggle worship has also been developed in our early years class up at the school. So the children have that pathway of seeing wiggle, and then children are now participating actually in wiggle worship up to year 2 within the school. So they've got that whole experience of being part of a worship structure which they know and understand and can engage and find accessible to them, to explore God and to experience Jesus's love.
That's great, and that is in their everyday lives as is age appropriate and going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much, Jo. Really massive thank you. I think you've given us lots of inspiration today, and I'm sure people will be wanting to get in touch with you to find out more. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.